The Minnesota Vikings played at the Metrodome from 1982 to 2013. Their stadium opened in 1982 and was used by both the Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Twins. In 2010, the Twins got their own stadium, Target Field, and the Metrodome was left all to the Vikings. On December 12, 2010, the Vikings were scheduled to have a home game against the New York Giants. However, there was heavy snowfall in the Minneapolis area the day before the game, and it continued into the night. The Giants' flight to Minneapolis had to be moved to Kansas City instead, and they were planning on flying in the morning of the game. But overnight, obviously, the game could not be played, and it was moved to Detroit the next day. Detroit had an indoor stadium, and it's extremely lucky for everyone that the roof collapsed in the middle of the night and not when the game was going on with a lot of people inside. The Minneapolis area had gotten 17 inches of snow, and workers were not able to remove the snow from the Metrodome roof because of slippery and hazardous conditions. This was not the first time that the Metrodome roof had problems though. In the early 1980s, the stadium roof collapsed 4 times, but never the day of or the day before a game. The Vikings continued to play at the Metrodome through the 2013 season. Then they later got a new stadium, which has a much better roof on it. There are several common mistakes that can happen in stadiums. One of those is the power going out during a game. This has happened many times over the years across all sports, but there are 2 times that are probably the most memorable. One of those was the power going out in the 2012 Super Bowl. In February of 2013, the San Francisco 49ers were playing the Baltimore Ravens in the Super Bowl. The game was being played at the Superdome in New Orleans. Not very far into the third quarter, the lights and power went out inside the stadium and gave some backup lighting. The power outage was caused by a newly installed electrical relay device in the stadium. After 34 minutes, the power was back and the Ravens went on to win the Super Bowl. Several years before that, the Bills and Chargers had a similar thing happen. It was October of 2008, and the San Diego Chargers were in Buffalo to play the Bills. During the game, a power line about a mile away from the stadium caught fire. Was that the stadium was open air and has no roof, plus it was a 1 p.m. game Eastern Time, so there was plenty of daylight. After a pause in the action, they decided to continue playing the game without any power. There were no scoreboards or music, and no headsets working either. This made it challenging for both teams, but the Bills ended up beating the Chargers 23-14. Another problem in stadiums that happens during a game is the sprinklers going off. This mostly happens at baseball stadiums, but in 1995, it happened at an NBA basketball game. That's right, there was a water delay at an NBA game. This happened in 1994 when the Spurs played their home games at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. It was the season opener against the Golden State Warriors, and a pregame firework caused the sprinkler system in the stadium to go off. There was a water cannon going off, soaking the fans first, and then it later reached the basketball court and caused a 50-minute delay in the start of the game. The crazy thing is that some fans had actually brought umbrellas with them, even though the Alamo Dome has a roof. In a previous game, the roof had leaked and fans had gotten wet. I'm not sure if they thought that would happen again or if they brought the umbrellas as a joke, but it's a good thing they did because they sure needed them. 20 years later, there was a sort of opposite problem in San Antonio. It was the 2014 NBA Finals Game 1 between the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs now played at AT&T Center, and during the game, the stadium's air conditioner went out. This caused extremely warm temperatures that got at one point to 90 degrees. Ironically, the Heat couldn't take the heat and they lost to the Spurs. The problem was caused by an electrical failure for the power that ran the air conditioning. The Spurs apologized for the problem and then went on to win the NBA Finals in 5 games. In the National Hockey League, this happened as well. It was the Stanley Cup Finals of 1988 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Boston Bruins. During Game 4, the temperature inside got up to 80 degrees in the Boston Garden. This caused large amounts of fog inside. Then, with the game tied in the second period and the Edmonton Oilers leading the series 3-0, the power went out in Boston. The game ended up being suspended and had to resume 2 days later in Edmonton. The Oilers ended up winning and sweeping the series. Veterans Stadium was located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania from 1961 until 2003. The stadium was shared by the Philadelphia Phillies and the Philadelphia Eagles. The stadium surface was AstroTurf during the entire time for both teams, and this caused some problems. Obviously, the stadium would have to be converted back and forth between football and baseball. The turf would sometimes be uneven because of this. In August of 2001, the Ravens were scheduled to come into town to play the Eagles for a preseason game. In pregame warm-ups though, both teams were noticing that the turf was especially uneven.
Who did this? The Phillies grounds crew.
I want to see what this thing looks like when they peel this off.
There was some work done to the turf, but it was not possible to get it good enough on time to play the game that night. After a meeting between players, coaches, and officials, they decided to cancel the game because of the playing surface to be unsafe. This was a big disappointment for everybody, especially the 45,000 fans in Philadelphia who smashed a will call window and other areas outside the stadium. The press elevator also got stuck between the first and second level while a news conference was going on. Nobody was harmed, but 18 people had to wait 40 minutes to get let out of the elevator. The game was never made up because it was a preseason game, and the Ravens had to travel back to Baltimore without playing at all. In February of 2011, the Super Bowl was played in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. It was between the Packers and the Steelers, and for the game, they were going to add a limited number of temporary seating areas so that more fans could attend. Unfortunately, the temporary seating areas were not completed on time. This affected 1,250 fans, and the NFL was able to find similar or better seating for 850 of them, but 400 were left without seats at all. Those 400 fans had the option to watch the game in standing room only areas or on monitors in the North Field Club. The tickets affected were valued at $800 each, and all of the 400 fans, whether they went to the standing room areas or not, were given a refund at 3 times face value, which would be $2,400. In the NBA, it's rare, but sometimes players break the hoops or backboards with dunks. It has happened quite a few times and causes a delay until it can be fixed. This also happened in the NFL though. It was November of 2013, and the Saints were playing the Atlanta Falcons at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. During the game, Saints tight end Jimmy Graham caught a touchdown pass, and as a celebration, he dunked the football in the field goal posts. This caused the goalpost to break, and it was bending unevenly, forcing the game to be delayed. FedEx Field is the home of the Washington Commanders and has had a few problems over the years. The stadium opened in 1997, but has been renovated twice and expanded 3 times, causing some strange seating areas. In the 2021 NFL season, there were 3 separate incidents of water leaks that were near fans. Then, in January of 2022, after a game against the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts was jogging off the field when a stadium railing broke and gave way. This caused a number of fans to fall onto the field in front of Jalen Hurts. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.